Hello indie game fans, today is my birthday and as is tradition for the second year running, let's take a look at some upcoming indie games using my favourite art style. There are some repeats from last year's video, where games failed to make the 2021 release window, but I'm sure they will by next year, with this list having quite a number of action platformers. If you have not watched it, find my video on upcoming Metroidvania games for more pixel art goodness after you're done with this video. Let's begin with a quick teaser for Lakeside, a relaxing side-scrolling city builder that has some of the most impressive pixel art that I have seen. I love the tremendous amount of details in the buildings and landscapes, but it does come to us from developer Massive Galaxy Studios, who seem to have multiple projects running, so I'm cautiously optimistic about this one. Necrofugitive is another gorgeous game that I have my eye on, primarily due to the use of lighting effects, which looks amazing as sunlight streams through the leaves in the forest or windows in the building. You play as an evil shapeshifter, attempting to escape captivity by massacring the guards that come after you. Combat is the focus, with a variety of possible builds, from a stealthy assassin to an all-out brawler, where the highlight has to be the transformation into the powerful monsters. Since we last talked about this, the Steam store page has filled up quite a bit, so there is certainly progression on that front, so let's see what this game is when it releases next year. Fans of the channel will be familiar with Jack Move, another long in development title that I've covered multiple times on the channel since I do have a soft spot for classic turn-based JRPGs. However, this is a single protagonist game where you play as a hacker trying to locate her missing father and gets drawn into the dark web of intrigue. You know, the usual cyberpunk story beats. I do like the presentation and combat UI being very cyberspace in that Matrix kind of way, where there are analogs to stats like strength, dexterity and intelligence, as well as software instead of skills, with some beautiful overworld environments as well. If you enjoyed playing Flash games back in the day, I'm sure that you would have come across developer Berserk Studio, whose games have a certain sense of attitude about them, and with the demise of Flash, they have turned their attention to making regular games, one of which is Infernax. As can be seen from the user interface, I would consider this to be a classic-vania game, i.e. a game like the earlier Castlevania games rather than Symphony of the Night, with a relatively straightforward story of a knight returning home only to find that it has been overrun by monsters and has to fight and eradicate the source of the curse. I think that it looks fantastic, even having narrative choices and the consequences of that, so I'm definitely looking forward to this. Another title that I've shown off before is SANABI, previously known as SANABI the Revenant, and is a cyberpunk action platformer that I think looks fantastic. The main mechanic here appears to be the grappling hook, which you use to traverse through environments and in combat, where if the developer manages to get the physics right, could be one of the more mechanically satisfying games next year. Certainly a bit of Katana Zero in this, but they are trying to do their own thing, where some of the natural environments at the massive gilded hall shown off in this trailer looks amazing. It does come to us from a Korean developer as well, and is being published by New Wiz, who have quite a great catalogue of indie games under their belt, meaning that they see some potential in this, and I do as well. A game that currently has a 2021 release window is Mago, but since we are approaching the end of the year, I've gone and shoveled this into 2022, but regardless when this releases, will be something that I'm looking forward to. This is a pixel art action platformer where you play as a sorcerer in a tale as old as time, trying to rescue his beloved damsel from a great evil. From the overall look and level of zoom in this game, it does look like a GBA title, which I believe is intentional, but there does appear to be quite a nice amount of variety in gameplay, from shoot 'em up, auto runner and more, all in line with the theme since the sorcerer can transform into different forms. I do believe this is the project of a large Peruvian YouTuber, so as an indie game fan, it's always nice to see games from developers all over the world. Another fan favourite makes a return with Bushiden, a pixel art ninja action platformer that simply looks wonderful. It is another game that still has a 2021 release window stated on Steam, which I believe will get pushed to 2022, but I do think that the wait will be worth it since it looks fantastic and should also play well. This is not a Metroidvania but an action platformer with some backtracking, but there are a variety of weapons and even ninja spells that you can use, making this a no-brainer pick. A title that caught my eye is the Indonesian-made A Space for the Unbound, a slice-of-life point-and-click adventure game that is set in rural Indonesia in the 90s, which I believe is based on the developer's own experiences. There is, however, a supernatural twist, exploring the relationship between a boy and a girl with such powers, which of course reflects closely to Japanese animated movies like Weathering with You. As such, while I am not usually a slice-of-life or adventure game person myself, I do still think that it is of interest, with of course some gorgeous pixel art as well, making this not to be missed. A no-brainer pick that showed up on my list of upcoming fighting games is Fraymakers, another mashup of indie game characters in a platform fighter, but does have one of the most respected names in the Smash Brothers community working on this game. There's quite an interesting roster announced so far, having full and assist characters from Octodad to Commander Video, and even Diogenes from Getting Over It with Bennett Foddy. This developer is best known for the fan game series Super Smash Flash, which has been tremendously well received, but this is the legal version so to speak, and as a fan of indie games, of course this is up my alley. Another game that got delayed into 2022 is The Unliving, a Pikmin-like strategy game where you play as a necromancer, resurrecting slain enemies into an unstoppable undead horde, to be used to raze villagers to the ground as you seek to build a new world order on the ashes of the old one. I've said that I love playing as necromancers in games since the concept itself is just cool, where this is a roguelite title that conveniently has an excuse to explain how you can revive after every death, which is something that I appreciate in all roguelites. While I'm not a football or soccer person myself, I do have to give a very special mention to Football Story, a sports life sim title where you play as a young boy having to muster up his friends, training and playing football as they seek to take on the local professional football team. In addition to playing matches, there's a whole life sim aspect where you help the neighbours and experience life in the city, even being able to explore on your bicycle in this open world. The pixel art is gorgeous as well, tremendously detailed in the cityscapes, but not as impressive during the football matches, but it does still look great overall. Of the games on this list, it is the only title to have an actual release date in July, so hopefully they will be able to meet the deadline and release then. Add one more entry to the classic Vania space with Lords of Exile, another game that was supposed to be released in Q3 this year but got pushed, which makes it fairly certain for 2022. You play as a cursed knight, fighting his way through the land on a quest for revenge. So again, not the most original or creative story, but it works for what it is. I love the designs of the bosses and enemies shown off in this trailer, with a retro look that is fantastically done, so me being me, of course this gets a spot.
The Magister has summoned you all for an audience.
We need capable fighters to counter the attacks and discover their origin.
Magister, we accept your offer.
A nice surprise that we have not seen in a while is Freedom Planet 2, the sequel to one of the best platformers like Sonic that was released in 2014. This game has been very long in development, first releasing an early demo in 2017, but the developer has recently resurfaced and showed signs of life, which means that spring 2022 is fairly likely. This continues the story of the previous game, although no knowledge is needed, as our band of heroines tackles a new threat. If you have not played the original, it feels like how a Sonic game should, with plenty of character variety and even different levels and mechanics for each, where the sequel looks to be even bigger and better than the original. This developer did put out a fairly lengthy narrated trailer as well, so I'll leave you to that.
Intriguing offer. What's first? This calls for a race!
Really? You do know who I am, right?
Aw, yeah! This is why I put on my punching gloves!
I don't! We have a new record!
We need you to track down a thief. A large portion of our weapons and steel reserves have mysteriously vanished.
Nervous as always, I see. Very well.
Whatever. I'll just give him a one-way ticket home, courtesy of the 100-hook punch.
The world of Avalis needs hope, but more than that, it needs heroes.
Truly? Then why not tell your students what's really going on?
What? No, that's not true!
One of the reasons as to why I love LUNARK is the concept of the game itself, being a cinematic platformer in the style of games like Flashback and OG Prince of Persia, seen through the very deliberate movement and animation. I'm not even a particularly huge fan for games in this genre, but the fact that crowdfunding and indie games have made a title like this possible is pretty insane. It doesn't hurt that the pixel art is gorgeous as well, making this another no-brainer pick. Of course, Sea of Stars gets a spot on the list, being a turn-based JRPG that I'm very excited about, coming to us from developer Sabotage Studio, who made The Messenger. From the look of the combat system, this is definitely paying tribute to Chrono Trigger, where our two main characters, the children of the solstice, must combine the power of sun and moon in order to defeat the forces of a great evil known as the Fleshmancer. Again, my soft spot for JRPGs shows, but I do think that based on the pedigree alone, whether you are a fan of the genre or not, is definitely a title of interest.
Love. The strongest feeling of all. It makes you happy and gives you security. A safe haven. But what would happen if someone tried to take this feeling away from you? What would you do for the one you love the most? Everything.
Another pixel art entry that I think looks gorgeous due to the lighting is Sons of Valhalla, a side-scrolling base-building strategy game that is, of course, similar to Kingdom, only with a different pixel art style and is set in Britannia. Play as the son of a Viking Jarl, having to conquer England and to save the love of his life. It does appear that the hero character, so to speak, plays a more significant role in combat, but again, absolutely amazing pixel art not to be missed. Of course, Songs of Conquest makes the list, since I absolutely love the Heroes of Might and Magic series, being a critical part of my childhood growing up, where this looks to be the best attempt at a game like that I can remember. If you're not familiar, this is a turn-based strategy title, but where you have a home castle, being able to construct buildings that allows you to recruit new units and troops. Your hero character then collects these units into an army, travelling across the map, getting resources and artifacts, and of course, participating in combat. This then zooms into grid-based, turn-based strategy, which is not as stuffy or boring as a 4X game, where the pixel art here simply looks amazing and makes use of things like camera angles, perspectives, and blurring to make it look even better.
Welcome, mighty warriors. Choose what kind of legend you want to write.
A new entry to the channel is Soldiers, one that I've been keeping an eye on and was waiting for a trailer, so now that it's out, of course I had to show it off. I'm not quite sure what kind of game this is, since it has multiple playable characters, but does talk about Metroidvania exploration in an interconnected world. Needless to say, gorgeous pixel arts in this as well, but I love the clouds and lighting in this game, with a narrated trailer as well, so I'll leave you to them.
Magnificent landscapes. In a world where life and death seem to blur into one, become the toughest warrior, master new abilities, and retrieve powerful artifacts. But don't get too confident. Never underestimate the enemy. They could be more powerful than you imagine. Will you be strong enough to succeed and bring your fellow soldiers back home?
One of the highly anticipated pixel art titles is the cyberpunk entry The Last Night, and after some controversy and next to no news on that front, a game of interest surfaced at E3 this year in Replaced, where it seems like the developers of this game got fed up of waiting and decided to make their own, replacing The Last Night, so to speak. I'm not trying to take anything away from this developer since the art here is gorgeous, showing how impressive modern pixel art in games can be. And it's a cyberpunk tale where you play as an AI unwillingly trapped in a human body, trying to find its way in the world while fending off enemies. As one of you rightly pointed out in my video on upcoming Metroidvania games, I made a huge omission in forgetting to cover Momodora Moonlit Farewell, but in my defense, I do use Steam as a base to find all of these games and it is not on Steam, but I am making up for that by showing it off here. This is technically Momodora 5, following on from Reverie Under the Moonlight, and is a Metroidvania entry that will look familiar to fans of the series. It does appear that you are still playing as a leaf-wielding maiden, having to adventure through the land and to battle a number of bosses, with the challenge of combat being the focus. While I did like their previous title Minoria, I do think that the developers themselves were not too happy with it, so let's hope that this title will fulfill them creatively, taking the #1 spot. For more pixel art or Metroidvania games, watch these videos and I will see you after the jump.